Welcome to DEPT Growth Marketing Week. We kicked off this morning live from Amsterdam and now continue with our afternoon edition live from Berlin, Germany. We are very happy that you all tuned in and joined us this afternoon. Today we will immerse ourselves in discussions and sessions on the latest developments in growth marketing, retail media and AI. We have an exciting program for you in place with even more exciting speakers from the industry and are very happy that experts from Mars and DEPT will share first-hand insights with us today. Unfortunately, Adrian Klee, CEO of Brewdog, as well as Simon Harlinghausen, Managing Director from Miele X, had to cancel yesterday at very short notice. So these items of the program won't be part of our program today. We are really sorry about that.
I guess it's that time of year. We're sorry about that one.
Yeah, but however, we are confident that we still have an exciting and relevant program for you ready. We will kick off our program with our view on the current state of growth marketing, followed by a 20 to 30-minute fireside chat with Mars about the balancing act between retail media and sales and marketing, and close the event with a 10-minute inspirational session on AI and digital advertising. And for our on-site audience here in Berlin, there will be 2 additional exclusive breakout sessions on generative AI and retail media. I'm Gesine Meidler, Director of Business Development and Partner at DEPT, and together with my colleague Tobias, we will be your host for the next 45 minutes.
And I'm Tobias, Global SVP of Clients at DEPT and also the Managing Director here in Berlin. Super nice to see you all and all of you joining at home.
Yes. So let's kick off.
All right, let's do that. I think I can take that from you, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Gesine.
Yes.
All right. So the state of growth marketing. That's a pretty big statement for me to tackle probably in the next 2 or 3 minutes. And I would say maybe for the sake of this conversation, I'll take it down to something a bit more simple, which is, if I think about my career in digital marketing, there's probably been one constant that's always been there. I think it's prevalent also in what you do on a day-to-day basis, and also what we'll allude to in our chats today. I think we've got Lucas here. Thanks for joining us, Lucas, as well as a few others to talk about AI as well as retail media. And that constant, that thing that I'm describing, is probably change. Change is the thing that sort of follows us everywhere, and something that we need to embrace. And if I think about what that change has meant maybe more recently, you only need to look at a few statistics to understand that impact, right? You could talk about the year-on-year double-digit growth for some of the biggest digital platforms in the world, the things that we use on an everyday basis. You can look at how much content we consume and how our even consumer behavior has changed online just by this one statistic of 1 million hours viewed by the top 5 English streamers on Twitch. Or maybe you can look at, given the topic at hand today, just the growth of digital marketing spend in retail media and how that's brought together sales and marketing teams across organizations across not only Germany but the world. And finally, the prevalence of AI. I don't think you can open a trade press without seeing those lovely 2 letters, whether it's assisted creative or even in our everyday use, helping us to do the things that we do every day. I promise that our presentations are not all written with AI. And that comes back to my point on what is that constant, what's the thing, maybe what the future holds. I believe it to be change. And I honestly think that change gets a bit of a bad rap. Like, you think about change and you think about, oh my gosh, I need to do this thing, and it's a bit of a haunting word. But in reality, I think it offers a new opportunity every single time a new dynamic develops, and opportunities for us to embrace. And it makes it interesting what we do on a day-to-day basis, at least what I think. I think I don't only want to talk about change in the context of it in theory, but rather also in practice. I think at DEPT we are pragmatists, and I would like to see this as both an inspiration session, but also an implementation session. So how can you use change in your day-to-day? And I hope you can actually extract value from what we talk about today, not only what you can talk about at the water cooler next time you speak to your colleagues. So with that in mind, the way that we think about this change and the implications in the industry and the implications of what we do, I don't think I can do a better job than this lovely video, so maybe I'll let the video play, and I'll give you an introduction to how we think about growth and the future in our space. Is that cool? All right, let's do that.
Managing 3.5 billion in media, empowered by creative automation, data, and AI. DEPT partners with the world's most influential platforms every day. Whether that be to enhance brand recognition, outperform performance marketing, or improve customer loyalty, we never hold back. We're decoding data from millions of ads across 165 countries and connecting every touch point in the customer lifecycle, from social to search and from retail media to CRM, to deliver actionable insights, ROI-focused strategies, and lasting relationships. ADA, our proprietary MarTech platform, offers over 100 world-class solutions, delivering personalization at scale and utilizing AI for smarter decision-making, while respecting people's privacy. Our team of 2,000 plus media, creative, data, and AI experts worldwide are pioneers in brand consumer communication, crafting award-winning campaigns that add fuel to the fire of business growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So now I'm really happy to introduce you to our fantastic industry speaker in a conversation with Lukas Seiler, Global Digital Commercial Director at Mars, with a focus on their pet care division. Tobias will discuss how sales and marketing win retail media together and answer any questions you might have. So, Lukas and Tobias, the stage is yours.
Nice one. Cheers.
Sorry.
That's good.
We'll do our best, right, Lukas?
Well, it's a big ask.
I know, right?
Answer any questions
Okay. Any questions?
that they might have.
So that brings me to my first most important question. Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Cat, no, dog.
Okay, good answer, because I'm also a dog person. I think that's a nice product placement, right?
It's very good.
Yeah.
I love the vibe and the brand, and it all comes together.
All right, and that's
the jeans, the blue.
Yeah. The color coordination, even.
It's obvious we're talking to agency people here.
Yeah. No offense taken. Cool. Well, let's get to the program. Beyond the pleasantries. Firstly, Lukas, thank you so much for making the time to have a chat. I'm actually really looking forward to chatting with you. We've spoken a little bit about this big topic that we've been asked to tackle together, right? But maybe to give us some grounding and sort of kick us off, could you give us a sense of, given the topic is about retail media, and you spend a lot of time in that space in your day-to-day, could you give us a sense of the increasing importance of retail media in the context of Mars Pet Care, and how much more important it's become over time for you?
I'll use a little example for this. We know in Germany roughly 1/3 of the households have a pet. And of that third, some are dogs, some are cats. And now if you're advertising, and you're advertising to all households, you see the problem. Now, if you already know they have a pet, that helps. But if you know they have a cat or they have a dog, that helps even more. If you know they have a young cat or a young dog or an old dog or a sick cat, or which breed of dog with the special needs, is it a Chihuahua or is it a Bernhardiner? So, that matters for us because the ads are otherwise not very relevant. So retail media has really opened the door for us to basically turn the screw tighter on being specific in who we advertise to, making advertising more relevant and more efficient and more effective. But without the retail data on consumer behavior, what they have, what they buy, first-party data, that all wouldn't have been possible. So for us, who are always marketing to a subset of the population, that's super important.
Yeah, that I can follow. I understand that completely. All right. So that gives us a bit of context as to the importance of this channel, I suppose, as this discipline. It probably goes beyond the talk about a channel. Let's maybe talk about how we can launch into that world and maybe drawing from some of your experience. So the first question I have for you is, retail media is sort of like in this strange world of both sales and marketing. How do you walk that tightrope in bringing something to life that straddles two different disciplines?
Yeah, I think that you're spot on the complication. I don't think there's a formal academic definition of what retail media is.
Right.
If you look today, we might probably agree in this room here with people on what it is, but maybe tomorrow there's stuff falling out and new stuff coming in, most likely the latter. And so we need to acknowledge the fact that retail media is not sort of a defined set and has very clear boundaries, but rather a bit amorphous. And this is problematic for corporations because we'd like to have our stuff in one place, and here, this is my desk, this is your desk, and this is how we do it. Amazon lives the management principle of single-threaded ownership. That's very difficult with a topic like retail media because it's basically smack in the middle between marketing and sales, right? Because you're tying together customer information, you're tying together customer data, purchase history, all of that together. That hasn't been done before with media, with impressions. And suddenly, key account managers sitting at customers are confronted by buyers with, you really need to buy this on-site placement. It's very good, trust me. And they're like, you know, I need to talk to the media people, and they probably will tell them that's probably not that great of a deal. So, you know, that's a bit the point.
Yeah, fair enough. And I suppose, like, when you're making that decision of how to strike that balance between those two things, like, what are some of the important things to look out for? Is it, because I guess, you know, there's sales-driven organizations, there are marketing-driven organizations, who has the budget probably comes into play. What are some of the things that we need to sort of think about when we're trying to make that balancing act?
Well, if you try to understand where the power is, it often is a good idea to look at who's paying for it. Right?
Fair enough. Simple equation.
I don't say that it should end there, but probably that's the starting point of, you know, is this a ads placement, or is this a retail discount, a retail placement, a retail investment? And the reality is that is also evolving, and everyone is sort of working through which line of the P&L does which type of campaign and which type of measurement belong to. We also need to be aware that it's the group to take a decision on what retail media is and who should own it and who should make the definition is a larger group. It's not just the salesperson and the media person, it's also sort of overall brand strategy or company strategy or corporate strategy. What do we want to achieve? And then I think the most important element that we have underneath there is a aligned measurement framework, a KPI framework. Key account managers will need to look at basically media outputs, and media people will need to look at customer interactions where they're like, what is this? So basically we need one retail media framework in terms of measurement, a KPI framework that helps us understand it. And everyone here and some people at the stream, you know, do you have one dashboard, a sales dashboard and a media dashboard? Is it combined, or do you have two separate ones? And that will basically, the fact, if you have two or one, will probably tell you already how well integrated your media strategy is.
Fair enough. So I guess to ground ourselves a little bit, we talk about, all right, there's this new thing, it lands in between sales and marketing. So, all right, who's going to take on the ownership of it? It's dependent on the organizational setup and who's willing to take it on as one, a responsibility, and two, pay for it. And ultimately, what is important is that we bring it together with a sort of unified measurement framework.
Yes, the measurement framework, I think, is sort of the last step. I think the first step is the corporate strategy.
Got it.
You need to understand, what are you trying to achieve? From a consumer perspective, from a customer perspective, from a brand perspective. And then breaking that framework down a lot earlier than you probably anticipate, you will be confronted with the question, how do we tie that strategy together between retailers and publishers, basically the retail media network.
Got it. So, okay, let's imagine a world in which we've now decided retail media is a good element to add to our sales and marketing mix, so we don't need to debate that. And let's say, for argument's sake, it sits in marketing. Fine. Now we have a decision. There are so many retail platforms. They're being used as both media platforms as well as some of them themselves are retailers. Is it a retailer strategy, or is it a media strategy? How do we find the balance of bringing those two worlds together, right?
Very, very good question. I think the big element here is that the different retail media networks and the different campaign types, different placements, the different promotional logics, the different CDPs that everyone has, have different benefits. And your strategy needs to be aligned to the benefits that your basically advertising strategy is built on, or your retail media strategy. And we need to tie those two things together, right? We start with a good strategy. This is like super boring and everyone says it all the time, but be clear on your priorities as a company and on your brands, and then translate that in a strategy. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we're looking at a place where the marketplace that you can buy a retail media strategy is very differentiated from probably some very dodgy, cheap places to some very nicely lit and shiny but very expensive places, and from some very broad targeting to some ultra precise targeting. So you need to think about what's my objective, how do I achieve that, and then you can say, oh, this retail channel or this media element will really work well in the mix of achieving the overall objective.
Yeah, we talked previously about having an integrated measurement framework that everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, for lack of a better phrase. How do you feel about third-party data, first-party data in the decision-making of a platform itself? Do you think that first-party data plays a big role in this?
I would say it depends on your product.
Okay.
If it's cats or dogs, it's important to know
as we just
what
mentioned,
you're facing.
Yeah.
If it's a USB charging cable, probably most people in the room here will need it.
Yeah.
So that's probably less need to be super first-party heavy on USB charging cables. Sorry if anyone here is from the industry.
Yeah.
But I think it's a different use case, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a very differentiated shopper/consumer/buyer population, then you will probably need more first-party data. If everyone can use it, you probably can go with less.
Yeah, fair enough. Quite straightforward. All right, so we've established that we're going to focus on retail media into our mix. We now know what platforms we're going to leverage based on their capabilities, whether they're shiny or a bit more dodgy, and we've also agreed which data points matter to us. Let's say that we're in that scenario. Now we have, typically on a retail media platform, you've got organic and you've got paid capabilities.
Yep.
How do you position, what is your view on the use of organic and paid, and what's the ideal mix for a brand or for a company, for a business?
Again, sorry to be a bit boring, it really depends, I think.
I get that.
Intuitively, I would say you always should focus on a great organic performance.
Yeah.
And then you should understand your consumer journey and the path to purchase. And then you will probably have gaps in that path to purchase organically. Probably your brand is struggling to, it has great awareness, but people really do not type it in if they start searching for it. So you're struggling to bring it down in the funnel to the consideration phase. This is a place where certain retail media networks or products might really help with that specific step, and then you can bring them in and take them further down the funnel. Overall, we see that retail media works better the lower the funnel is, and the proven data, the higher up in the funnel, is difficult. I think that's fair to say, but it really depends on where your gaps in your consumer journey are. I think some people are telling a great story and have very little gaps, and others it's a really long stretch to bring people across.
I guess your observation on the fact that further down the conversion funnel, it's a bit more tangible, I suppose, the impact.
Yeah.
The fact that it's less tangible upper funnel, I suppose that's just also time, right? Because it's such an evolving landscape, we'll probably learn more as we go. Do you feel similarly, or?
Yeah, yes, but also I think we're about to open a very exciting door at the moment that we can combine in-store data with on-site data.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, if you look at the Lidl app, they're very good at that already.
Yeah.
So they know what you're buying on promotion because they incentivize you to use the app.
Sure.
And on the other side, basically, you can target those people on site. So this is one of the examples that I have in mind. Like, this wasn't possible a couple of years ago to target them at that level. And now everyone take out their phone and look how many loyalty apps do you have, how many basically retailers or shopping platforms can target you. I think we realize, if you think about it from that perspective, that there is a very potent data set that we are creating to be targeted in advertising exactly if you bring the different occasions of shopping together.
I think that's super interesting. Okay. I think we still got a few more questions to go, if that's cool with you, Lucas.
Please.
My next question is, how do you, I suppose, now that we've established the principles, how we're going to go about it, how we're going to measure the activities we're even going to do on those platforms. The reality is, like, as we get going, all of a sudden we have an entirely new set of data that we're dealing with, born out of the fact that we're leveraging this new channel. How do you deal with that increased level of data as a business then, and how do you integrate that into, I suppose, your view of the world in what you're doing? Is that a challenge that you face as well?
Yeah, but I think it's super easy to collect large amount of data. It's very difficult to make sense of that.
Yeah, fair enough.
So the capability probably changes to what it was previously. Like, I don't want to say it's easier to collect data, but it's more accessible. And what I think the bigger lift will be is to make sense of that data, that increased access to first-party data, for example. And how do you tie it together with your other elements of your customer strategy and your media strategy? So I would say cast the net wide, but then really focus on simplification or on choicefulness, on what do I want to basically achieve. Coming back to the measurement framework, ideally that should be clear. We want incremental sales, or we want incremental reach, or we want incremental brand awareness, or we want measure brand equity with a certain attribute. If you're clear on that, then this will basically tie nicely together. Yeah.
So, am I understanding you correctly when you say the data shouldn't be limited in its use for just data for retail media purposes? No. Like, it could have broader implications on decisions that you make more broadly? Okay.
Yes. Everything, of course, under GDPR in a very compliant way.
Of course.
But
of course.
I think, we should basically try to understand as much as possible.
Yeah, understood. Understood. Okay, so imagine now, because you and I, we're both operating in Europe.
Yep.
We don't only have the lovely challenge of introducing new channels and data streams into the work that we're doing. Yep. We also now have to do that across 17 markets, or maybe let's, for the sake of simplicity, say 6. But EMEA poses that challenge by the nature of doing business in EMEA. How do you deal with that challenge of now understanding that, okay, in the Netherlands you might have a bol.com, in another market you might have another retail media platform. That also adds another layer of complication, right? How do you view that part of it?
I think if you think well about your objectives and decide on what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it, you will be clear on your data structure. What are we collecting? How are we going to use it? And that then should be a provider that scales, or a product, if it's a CDP or something else, that scales across. Basically, your use cases anticipate there will be different one. The reality is we see there's a lot of dynamic in the market of who works with whom, which solution, which tech provider is connected with which retailer. It's a very dynamic place at the moment. So I think it's going to be messy for a bit more.
Yeah, volatile.
Let's see where we land in probably 1 to 2 years down the road in terms of who offers what, and if it's still as complex and diversified. Yeah,
I guess what you're saying is, like, you have to look at your own organizational setup as well as maybe even your agency setup, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And be choiceful in what you do in-house and what you do basically externally, right? There are some brands might say we want to give everything to an agency. Yeah. Some brands might say we do the planning. Procter & Gamble put an interview out yesterday saying they insourced the digital media planning for one division completely, because it's that only then we can achieve the precision that we want if we do it ourselves. So, like, you need to be quite large and substantial in terms of budgets and resources to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
That's, I think, the gist of it. Like, what can you afford and how well can you staff that? And that will lead your decision. Also, I think it develops over time. You probably start off with a more agency model, and then after a couple of iterations, you realize, okay, this one I can really do myself. I should be able to do myself. And you start investing in that. And then, it's a back and forth between brands and agencies on who does what.
I guess that also necessitates us on the agency position to be adaptable, much like you need to be adaptable, right?
Yes.
Because as it grows in importance for your business, you might go, you know what, this component part of it we'll do in-house, but this will continue because of cost efficiencies or whatever other reason.
Remember, it's already a bit ago, but the Pokemon hype.
Yeah.
And suddenly there were questions.
I'm young enough still,
See, and the question is, who can advertise through that. When it was basically skyrocketing, rocketing, and we will have other instances like this where basically something very new. When TikTok really had sort of the breakthrough in Europe.
Sure.
Like it's the same thing. Like suddenly there's something new and you need to adapt to it. Of course, you're going to rely on people who are going to do that for a broader audience, and then
Sure thing.
at one point you're like, okay, we can do that ourselves now.
Yeah.
But then you need the basically forward-thinking people for the next big thing.
Yeah. I feel like the running gag of our conversation is know what you want and then make the decision accordingly.
I think it helps in a lot of places in life if you know what you want. And probably it puts a difficult conversation earlier. But
Yeah,
the
sure.
results is probably a bit more acceptable or nice or enjoyable.
Yeah, but also I suppose it keeps you on track, right? Because I think we were discussing it earlier, maybe just over a coffee, but when with so much possibility, I suppose, and maybe even economic circumstances, you might start to feel that you're getting pulled in all sorts of different directions. But ultimately, if you have a sort of core tenet and core objective, you should be able to stay the path, right?
Absolutely. And I think with retail media, the possibilities, what you could do, are always outnumbering your budgets by a factor X, whatever, right?
Yes.
So it makes sense to be choiceful, not just because of the budget, but also because the use cases and the unique benefit of the different tools and companies and products is so different, right? So the times of, we have this much spare budget, let's run 8 more TV flights, and everybody knew what to do, and it sort of was clear what's next in line to do. That's over. Like, we want to grow more. What can we do with that budget? That requires a proper sit-down. What are objectives? Where are we falling short? What are the efficiencies of the different measurements, or the different measures that we could take, and then taking that forward.
Yeah.
So it's gotten a lot more detailed.
And so maybe even just on a more, maybe a personal question, but we talked a lot about the implications of this discipline and how you can go about going from, all right, it doesn't exist in your organization to it being a reality and how you deal with that reality. But, it's not all about cost and all about sort of the ROI driving piece. I suppose that you also have core tenets of how you approach business. Is there anything that, beyond the questions I have for today, that you want to talk about maybe in the terms of the things that you think about when you're engaging in new strategies or retail media as a topic, for example? I'm not sure.
I think the space to watch is sustainability.
Okay.
If you think sustainability, we all think about fossil fuel-powered cars and packaging and probably the CO2 or the greenhouse gas emission impact of animal, so if you're not living vegetarian. But we started to dig into it, and the impact of advertising and digital advertising, or programmatic, or however you want to call it, is quite significant. So I would say watch this space and be ready for a lot of brands asking, like, what's your footprint of the advertising? What kind of energy sources does your programmatic server run on? Have you done all measurements to reduce the energy consumption of your ads, basically in the creation and the delivery of those apps? Are we optimizing for something like this? Can we optimize for the most efficient way in doing that? And sustainability is a big priority for Mars, and I think read the corporate reports. It's getting more serious everywhere, more and more pledges and more scrutiny in reviewing that. So I think we should all be ready to have a look at our business and say, this is our impact.
And honestly, what better way to exercise some scrutiny than on that topic, right? Given its importance.
Yep.
Lucas, thank you so much for sharing that, mate, and thanks
Thank
for the
you.
conversation. Thanks for everyone. All right. So I think we may have a few moments for maybe 1 or 2 questions. I think that's okay. Yes? Okay, I'm getting the nod. The nod is always good. All right, so I'm going to open the floor for everyone here in the room, but also anyone online who would like to share any questions. I'm going to get my handy-dandy questions. Thank you to the team. No one here in the room? If not, I believe I have one here from coming in. So for Lucas, from Lisa, Kano Shoes, I believe. I'm just starting out in retail media. What are the 3 most important things that I should think about before I get going?
take proper time to understand it. What you want to achieve, I think, is the first one. We talked about this. Be choiceful.
I think she got that by now.
Good. Be choiceful in the partners that you select, because the differentiated benefit, especially in the beginning, you will not have the budget or the ability to go super big on something. You will need to build your case with small niche, super well engineered, and build on great insights, campaigns, and everything. So, the mindset of finding the golden nugget in insight and transferring that in a strategy. And I think the last way to look at it, especially if she's coming from a traditional media background, we need to be a lot closer to what happens. So basically, in-flight optimization of campaigns, adjustments that we're doing based on results. This is something sort of, ensuring that you change the mindset from I'm briefing, it's running, we're running a post-mortem 2 weeks afterwards, and looking at the results, that's over. You're going to look 3 times a day how the campaign is performing, and sort of, prepare for that more live mindset of the job.
Nice. Lisa, well, I hope you can draw some value from that. I think I need to move on. Oh, there's one more question. Lovely. We have a microphone. So people at home can hear you. Not that we can hear you. We can hear you just fine.
Is it for the stream?
Yes, it is. That's right.
Hi, this is Utku, by the way. Thank you, Tobias and Lucas, for the speech. I wanted to ask you how mature do you think the retail media in Europe is? Or do you think that there's a way of growing compared to the other countries or regions?
That's a good question.
It's a difficult one. We see some very mature players and some very mature techniques. Paid search advertising, is that going to be reinvented? Probably not, right? It's already in its form quite nice. Are we going to see new ways or new products or new channels or new integration options going forward? I think so, yes. So it's like there's some stuff that's fairly optimized and well done, but I would really brace for more change. As the retailers and the publishers develop the joint products together.
Lovely. Yes? All right. Lucas, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Round of applause for everyone, please.
Thank you.
All right. There you go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucas, again. Super insightful. I'm sure that many brands can learn and draw some inspiration from it. And now on to our last piece of the program. Another topic that is on everyone's mind right now is AI. And Alec Burns, Principal Paid Advertising at DEPT, will now present a framework for maximizing the performance of AI-driven advertising tools. Alec, the stage is yours.
A bit of a mouthful. All righty, good afternoon, everyone, or whatever time of day it is if you're on the live stream where you are. So yeah, as promised by the title slide here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the relationship between the modern advertiser and AI. I admit I am slightly jumping on the AI kind of bandwagon here. There's obviously, it's a very hot topic at the moment, but rather than trying to wow you with the capabilities of it, I'm going to talk about how you can actually think about working with it. And the reason I think this is an important topic is because it is very likely in the coming years that it is going to become a much more prevalent part of your day-to-day workflow. Right? Maybe if you're no longer at the coalface, so to speak, actually directly responsible for campaign execution, you're still probably going to be leading teams that do have people in it that are going to be at the coalface working with these tools, and you need to be able to coach and mentor these people. Where I want to start, however, is with these guys. So this is Christian Blumenfeld and Gustav Eden. And unless there's any Norwegians in the room, you probably don't know who they are. They are triathletes from Norway. You go back a few years, no one really knew who they were. Promising up-and-coming athletes, but no one was really talking about them. And then this guy came along. So this guy is Olav Alexander Boo. Right? He is their coach, and he was brought in with a pretty simple mandate of putting Norwegians on the top of podiums at triathlon races. So he came in and he started doing things a little bit differently to the way people would normally approach this. He started collecting a lot of data. Right? So what you can see here, he's taking a blood lactate reading from Christian kind of mid-training session. That is relatively unconventional for those of you not really familiar with endurance sport. He's collecting data on a molecular level so he can use that data to shape their training in a way that's going to drive the best possible performances, to drive the peak performances at the perfect time for these races. And probably won't surprise you to learn that it's been incredibly successful. These two have won just about everything there is to win in the sport of triathlon. Right? They've broken world records, they've won Olympic gold, they've done it uniquely in very fast, short races, they've done it over very long, slow races. It's an incredible array of achievements there. But at this point, you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with advertising? Well, it occurs to me that there are some pretty strong parallels between AI tools and athletes. I think as advertisers, certainly historically, we've kind of thought of ourselves a little bit as tradespeople. Right? We have a tool belt, we've got a bunch of different tools for audience research, for keyword research, for bid optimization. But that's not really what the future looks like. Right? AI tools, much more like an athlete, will improve and adapt over time. Right? They can work towards a variety of different goals. And most importantly, right, we cannot directly control what they actually do. So we can set objectives, we can set budgets, we can outline parameters, but we're not actually going to be the ones who manage the campaigns themselves. Right? If a coach sets a 10K run for an athlete at 4 minutes per kilometer, they trust that the athlete will do it, but they can't actually move their arms and legs and make them run that pace for that distance. And it's a very, very similar relationship that we have now with these AI tools. So how do we actually go about making all of that happen? So just like OLAV, there's going to be 3 main steps that we have here, and it starts with gathering data. So gathering data is a really important one. It's really important because we have to consider the curse of dimensionality. So the curse of dimensionality is a machine learning term, right? In short, it refers to the problems that arise when you have very high dimensional spaces created by lots and lots of different variables, like we work with as advertisers. And the problem really comes from not having enough data to fill that massive high dimensional space. Because if there's not enough data in there, you can't really spot the patterns and thus can't predict future outcomes. So as a quick illustration, right, can you find the pattern in this grid? Rhetorical question, of course, because you can't. Right? There's not enough information there. Just imagine for a moment, though, right, you don't need food, don't need oxygen, don't need water, don't need sleep. Right? Your whole purpose is to find the pattern in this. Right? What's your next step? Right? You're going to have to start guessing. You don't have a choice, right? You're just going to have to start putting colors into places until something starts making sense, right? That is not entirely unlike what an AI-based algorithm will do or a machine learning-based algorithm will do. It will just start guessing randomly until things start making sense, right? And in the context of advertising, how expensive are those guesses going to get? You know, is it going to cost us an extra €1,000, an extra 10,000, an extra 100,000 before things start making sense? So it's a question that, you know, certainly if we're, you know, responsible for P&Ls, we need to be, you know, capable of answering. So as a guideline for overcoming this, with my high angle clicker, what we want to look at is about 2 to 3 times the amount of the date range for data for the period of time that you want it to predict accurately for. So you want to do some media mix modeling for 2024, right? Feed it in the data from 2022 and 2023, right? That's not a bad place to start, right? But it's not quite that simple. We have to also allow time to train with that data, right? Just like an athlete, just because we have the data doesn't instantly jump their fitness up a level, right? They need time for those adaptations and those changes to occur, right? So again, 2 to 3 as the guideline, but in this case, we want 2 to 3 weeks for like an initial training camp where we set the goals, right? We've got the data there ready for it to learn, right? And then it needs time to iterate and to spot those patterns and start predicting outcomes, right? Don't necessarily immediately trash all your AI-based plans because day one, you've not tripled your ROAS. It does need time. If you're going to make subsequent changes further down the line, you need to allow it time to adapt and bring those into the mix, right, before you maybe start thinking maybe this isn't working quite the way you wanted it to. And then finally, you need some kind of way of knowing whether or not you're actually achieving success. So there is I suppose like an AI fable at this point about the paperclip factory, right? You get an AI, you tell it to run a paperclip factory, and just tell it to make as many paperclips as it can, right? And the end of the story basically is it starts harvesting humans for raw materials to make paperclips because it doesn't consider everything else. All it does is just make paperclips. It doesn't factor in any other objectives, right? And it's hopefully, your advertising tools don't start harvesting people for it, but what we want to do, well, the angle's getting higher and higher. What we want to do is set 2 to 3 KPIs, right, that it's going to be working towards, right? Some tools are more sophisticated than others, but we're only really going to judge the performance based on whether or not it's achieving the objective that it's actually been set to achieve, right? If you tell it to maximize sales, don't think it's failed because impressions go down, and vice versa, right? It's not thinking about that metric, it's thinking only about that one metric you've told it to achieve, right? It's our role here as the coach to keep a view of all those other metrics, make sure things are remaining balanced, right? Exactly the same way that Olav will be looking at Christian and Gustav's fitness. They might be training for a really, really fast race, but he's going to be keeping an eye on all the other fitness markers because maybe 3 months down the line, they've got a long race and he needs to make sure they don't get too unbalanced. That's our role in this relationship, right? Give them a goal, but make sure that things remain balanced and aligned across all of our other metrics as well. So I might have to start jumping soon. Okay, wrapping up. Obviously, I've gone through that relatively quickly, right? But ultimately, what we want to be doing here is building a really good understanding, a good working relationship with these AI-based tools, right? Like if someone comes into your office tomorrow and tells you, hey, here's Steve, you're going to be working with him for the next 20, 30 years, every single day, every minute of every day, you'd probably want to build a good relationship with Steve, right? So without getting too Blade Runner-y, right? Think about how you want to build a working relationship with AI-based tools. And that is it from me. Thank you very much.
Questions, Alec? Don't leave us. Don't leave us. Yes.
Are there any
questions for Alec?
Even about triathlon.
Lucas, we can give him the mic. There you go.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for the presentation. Could you give us 1 or 2 examples of brands that you think are doing already a supreme job at this transformation from craftsmanship to coaches?
That's a good question because I think from my view that I get from inside an agency into clients, typically we're the ones actually implementing the AI for them. And I feel like it's a bit too self-congratulatory to say that DEPT's doing a great job with it.
I think it's okay to say.
Yeah. No, I mean, what I've seen with some brands that I think is probably best in class is just purely the openness to working with these tools and testing them and, quite frankly, spending money on them. Obviously, there's various different tools that we have for advertising. Some of them are more focused on kind of campaign management in terms of more the maths side of things and budgets. And then, of course, we have the generative AI, which is more on the creative side of it. And I think that's probably again, from my agency level view, that's probably the best approach is not being afraid within reason to invest in some of these tools and to allow your agency or allow your teams to actually work with and test them and accept that in the long run, it will pay off, even if in the short run, maybe things get a little bit wobbly in the middle. Because, we're at a really kind of emerging stage for a lot of these.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions? Oh, I thought there was a hand. Nope, nothing, no one at home. All right.
All good.
Thanks, Kazina.
Thanks,
Alec,
Alex.
again, round of applause. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, then I would say let's call it a day. And at least for our audience in the stream.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Thanks again to all the speakers for your participation in the stream, in this room, and all the insights we get today.
Yeah, and like we said, it's a bit short and sweet today, so you can get back to your dinner duties or home duties at home. But also please save the date, if you don't mind clicking, Gazina,
Yes.
for our DEPT Trends Forecast stream on December 12th. I'll actually be presenting that one too from Amsterdam. And we'll be exploring trends across culture, creativity, gaming, business, and technology, and how that will shape the future for 2024. So that'll be a nice talk, I think. Save it in your calendars. But for now, everyone streaming at home, thank you so much for your time. We do have more of a program here for anyone who's here physically with us in Germany, in Berlin, and we'll talk about that shortly. But thanks so much. Another round of applause to Lukas and to Alec.